Good afternoon and welcome to Behind the Mask, Defending Against Digital Disguise with Adam Cassar. So Adam has over 2 decades of experience in web security and infrastructure. He's had a front row seat to the evolution of cyber threats as a co-founder of peakhour.io. He's been particularly fascinated by how attackers are leveraging residential proxy networks to bypass traditional security controls and execute account takeovers. It led him to develop an innovative network fingerprinting technique that goes beyond the conventional IP-based security, which helps Australian businesses detect and block sophisticated attacks that appear to come from legitimate residential networks. Can everyone please join me in welcoming Adam to the stage?
Well, thank you everyone for joining me today for Behind the Mask, Defending Against Digital Disguise. When I first started Peak Hour, I've always looking at our clients' logs and wondering how come these attacks are coming from Telstra IPs? Why are they coming from Optus? What's going on? And little did I know the rabbit hole that I would uncover as I dug through to understand the nature of these attacks, how they originate, and the wider impact on security. So a quick check. Has anyone here used a free VPN service to unblock content? One person? Does anyone use a free browser extension for their day-to-day work? Does anyone use any free applications or games on their phones? Well, you may be unwittingly involved in a residential proxy network. So what is a residential proxy? A residential proxy is typically a service that allows third parties to route requests through home networks. And these are available as a service online with very little vetting. They typically have several million IPs available, and they enable third parties to make any type of requests they want against the website. So today we're going to talk about what is a residential proxy, how they are formed, the type of traffic typically seen through these networks, and ways that you can detect and mitigate against these threats. So just a quick refresher, just so that everyone is on the same page. What is a proxy? So typically when you make a connection to a website or some type of application, your web browser or curl or whatever it may be will initiate the TCP connection outbound and directly connect to that service. So both the IP layer, the TCP layer, and the application layer are going from your device to the website. With a proxy, you will be connecting first to an intermediary, and that will then make the connection on your behalf to the website. However, the application layer will still be behind your end device and the website. And we can leverage this fact to help with detections. So what are the types of proxies? Well, originally, when this whole industry started, they're data center proxies. And these were very easy to detect. You could leverage typical GeoIP information to look up the source IP and know that it was coming from Amazon or GCP or whatever it may be. They were fast and they were easy to access. Later on, to facilitate hiding, became leased ISP IPs. So these are companies that would lease an IP range directly from an ISP, such as TPG or AT&T, and they would utilize the IPs from that company. And the advantage that this gave was any GeoIP lookup would reveal that IP belonging to the ASN of the ISP. Then we have the real meat of it. We have true residential IPs. So these could in people's homes or offices, and they're generally applications that you may have unwittingly and knowingly installed, and they are routing requests through your home network or office network to wherever the third party may be wishing to use. And lastly, there are mobile IPs. These are the crown jewels of the industry, and these are typically 4G or nowadays 5G devices. And those two pictures we see there, one is from AliExpress. It's a SIM factory, and you can buy them for about $5,000, and they will expose whatever SIM cards that you have over a SOX proxy. And the later is a USB dongle farm with 4G dongles. And so they essentially facilitate those many IPs and connections. So the capabilities typically exposed by these services is that you will connect to a gateway. And this gateway hides the residential IP you'll be connecting to. And then there will be some type of selection process. So you'll be able to specify, well, I need this request to come from this country, from this city, from this ASN, from this type of operating system. That service will then pick the most appropriate IP that you require and route that through the home. They're typically exposed either as a SOX proxy or HTTP Connect, and they typically give value-added services such as capture bypass, request retrying, and IP rotation. So residential proxy traffic in action, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm not sure how to play my little sound clip. Sound clip? No sound clip? The good. So typically they're used for legitimate purposes, such as ad verification. So you can imagine you're showing different ads to different customer segments in different countries, and you want to verify that what you're paying for is actually being shown. Last mile monitoring. I typically use this at my company. I want to make sure that my service is available from many different networks, and it's quite easy to be able to select networks using residential proxy services to measure latency and verify connectivity. They're also heavily used for web scraping. Who knows that sneaker monitoring is a thing? AI training data is a thing, or even competitive price scraping. Understanding what your competitors' prices are, and so you can set your prices a little bit lower. The bad. So residential proxies have been implicated in ad fraud, credential stuffing, creating new accounts, DDoSs, scams, and purchase fraud. And we'd see these day to day in our service. And lastly is the ugly. These are a little bit more sophisticated. So hiding your identity for cybercrime, lateral movement attacks, DNS cache poisoning, exfiltrating data, monetary fraud. So monetary fraud is quite simple, really. If you've got a stolen credit card and you want to use that credit card and you know that the victim of the credit card lives in Sydney, you could quite easily utilise a residential IP located in Sydney close to the person's home to be able to make your purchase request, minimising any friction for you to use their credential card. So how do we know all about this? Well, the first study was called Resident Evil, a study of residential proxy networks. Now, this was all the way back in 2019. I've included this because it's quite relevant. And the researchers spent 4 months using residential proxy services to try to map out the network. And what they found by subscribing to these services was over 52,000 ISPs were implicated. 95% of the IPs were believed to be residential. Only 2% of the IPs were on any type of threat list. That's huge, only 2%. They also were able to see the type of attacks and data that was going through some of these proxies. And they verified it was ad fraud and stuff like that. Now, more recently, Trend Micro in 2023, they conducted their own study. And they were quite uniquely positioned with their endpoint security to be able to see the type of traffic that was going through. Now, they didn't focus on every single residential IP provider, but two that I will include was Infatica and IP proxy. And what they saw was account creation, credential stuffing attacks, and things against Bitwarden, data mining. I will go on about these companies and the type of service they provide and how they provide it in a later slide. So why is it a challenge? The big challenge is that typically over IPv4 networks is that CGNAT presents many users behind a single IP. So there could be tens, hundreds to thousands of people at any one time. And a proxy is essentially hiding behind this legitimate traffic. So it becomes impossible to block. What do you do if there's one illegitimate request behind an IP address at a particular point in time with all the other legitimate requests that are going through? So the data is essentially useless. And there's been a large commercial interest with many companies forming residential proxy networks. And there's even patents. And one such patent is publicly available, published in 2023 by Oxy Labs. And frankly, it's quite scary to understand the sophistication and the research and development that's gone behind these. So the patent quite clearly outlines how it works. A client will connect to their service, and then they will look at the request and where it's connecting. It will then enrich the request with cookies, headers, a browser profile to match the target website. It will ensure that TLS and TCP fingerprints match up with the expected device that the user is requesting, and then it will make the request. It will then monitor the result of the request and update its internal metrics. And if the request doesn't succeed, it will try again with slightly different parameters. So as a defender, this poses a very bleak picture. Here we have an adaptive system capable of modifying a request, matching it to a target profile, and adapting it to ensure that it goes through. This is highly sophisticated. And they will also go into the browser environment. So these are executing within a browser, giving back the appropriate screen size, the appropriate fonts, language, ensuring that the TLS fingerprint matches up. It's all very scary. And the advantages for the attacker? There are millions of IPs available. It's millions. And these are the holy grail, is that these are considered clean IPs. These aren't tainted IPs, these are considered clean IPs. There's no direct traceability. And lastly, the automation is all there for bypass. You don't have to be particularly smart to use these services, and the service provider will take care of it all for you. And to understand the scope of the issue, we mapped various providers who claim to give proxy detection services, such as MaxMind, IP to proxy, and we plugged in known proxy IP addresses into their service. And we could see a very bleak detection rate. So if you're relying on some static IP database from a provider that's using port scanning or some other service to be able to give you a proxy feed, It's just not going to cut it. So how do these networks form? If they're so nefarious, how does it happen? Well, typically, there's several such providers. And one way is via software development kit. People who provide free apps on the mobile phone, they're not just monetizing via the ads. They're monetizing through proxy networks. So by integrating with one of these SDKs, I've given this is from the Emphatica SDK documentation, and it shows the process by which you can easily integrate your free app with their service and start earning revenue. Other methods include by bundling free services, such as VPN services for content unblocking. And I've used this service myself. I've wanted my daughter to watch the new David Attenborough documentary about dinosaurs, and it was only viewing in the UK. Well, I want to watch it. And so one of these free content unblockers proved very useful. And lastly, there's various nefarious methods. So state actors may want to form their own residential proxy networks, and these may be provided by hacking SOHO devices. Now, this isn't a small thing. There's been ongoing legal battles amongst providers. And one of the legal battles that has been going is between Oxy Labs and Bright Data. And this is around the technology used for providing residential proxy services and mutating a request. And this shows that there's serious R&D effort going into these services, and there's also serious money behind it to be able to litigate. In the US, there was a large takedown of a residential proxy provider. One of them was 911.re. This was in 2022, and when they released their press release about taking them down, it was about taking down a botnet. And the way this botnet was performed was providing free VPN services. And one of the reasons it was taken down is there was no vetting of the customers who were utilising the service. So anyone could sign up and utilise 911.re's residential proxy service. And today you can go on Reddit and just do a search, and you will find numerous posts on there about, now 911.re is gone, who are you using? A more high-profile case was Ticketmaster versus Prestige Entertainment. Ticketmaster sued Prestige for over $10 million, claiming they were circumventing their ticket purchasing limits using automation methods and residential proxies. Now, it's interesting that Ticketmaster had to resort to a legal method by which to stop this from happening. The first time they tried to do it, they tried to use copyright law, which proved ineffective. The second time they used the DCMA, and DCMA was a perfect way for them to do it because it enables a company to protect their copyrighted work and anyone trying to circumvent any type of protection. And any type of protection could be as simple as a cookie. So if you delete cookies in your browser to try and circumvent some ticket purchasing limits, this could fall under DCMA. The next one was Meta, Facebook versus Bright Data. So Facebook sued Bright Data for scraping their websites. And the website they were scraping was Instagram. You can still go on the Bright Data website today, and they're selling data set for Instagram. You can download the full set for $860,000. They also give LinkedIn profiles, Google Map profiles, you name it. The interesting thing as part of this process is that it revealed a 6-year relationship between Meta and Bright Data. So the funny thing with the case was that Meta was suing the company for scraping its website, and it was using them to scrape other people's websites. So who here regularly updates their home router? Well, very good. Does anyone here use an ASUS, TP-Link, Cisco router? Or two state-sponsored actors, one Camaro Dragon, the other Volt Typhoon, created their own residential proxy network by hacking these type of routers. Now, when you read the popular IT security news, it wasn't the fact that they were creating these residential proxy networks. It was more about the methods such as horse shell, or in the case of Volt Typhoon, living off the land. But the reason why these residential proxies were so effective is that it enabled them to fly under the radar to either exfiltrate the data or to attack the critical infrastructure or UK government. So how are these formed? Anyone use Whole VPN? Nobody? Whole VPN is a free VPN service that allows you to unblock content. It's free and available to use, and they sell your connection to Bright Data. And they have informed consent. And the way they do it is, anyone here familiar with Robert Cialdini's principles of persuasion? Well, what they do is say, hey, we're unblocking content for you. Why don't you share your connection and unblock others? I installed this within a little VM, and I set up Wireshark outside the VM, and literally within 1 minute, there were HTTP requests coming that was totally unrelated to virtual machine traffic. Another one is iProxy Online. They provide an Android app allowing anyone to form their own residential proxy network. And watching an interview on YouTube with the founder is saying Facebook, Google, they can do nothing about it. They can't block any residential IPs, and so you can leverage this fact to do what you like. Maybe you would like to make some money by renting out your home IP. Well, one company called Proxidize sells the equipment. They will ship it to your door. That there is a 20 modem pack, complete with software. All you need to do is supply the SIM cards. They're claiming that you can have a income stream of around $200 a month, guaranteed. So the market today for residential proxies is over 250 providers. It's relatively cheap, and they're claiming a 99.9% success ratio. That's 99.9%. So just to hammer it home, how do these bypass traditional security controls? Well, IP rate limiting is effective. If you can imagine several 100,000 requests doing a credential stuffing attack against your APIs, how do you rate limit against that? You need something to group by. And if you're leveraging geo-IP information, well, that's useless as well, because you're not going to be blocking Telstra, you're not going to be blocking Optus. And in fact, you probably look at it, hey, it's coming over Telstra, it's legitimate. How do we tame this beast? Well, if we remember back to the start of the presentation, I outlined the nature of a proxy. So the TCP connection happens from the proxy to your service. However, any application layer is happening between the end device and your service. And you can leverage this information to be able to detect it's a proxy. So RTT differences is key here. So if you can detect the time a connection was made, and if you can either execute some JavaScript or some other application layer aware timing, you can look at the differences of them and determine they're a proxy. We utilise this method and it's highly effective at providing defence. Some research coming out of France mapped some of these providers, and one of the retry mechanisms that they use is to resend a TCP SYN traffic packet after 1 second. So if you have the smarts and you can modify your application, if you suspect that this is a proxied request, you could delay that and look for that second SYN. Another way to make up pools of leased IP, ISP IPs, is by leveraging statistical methods. So how we determine the optimal RTT threshold is by leveraging TCP fingerprints. So a proxy will typically have a single TCP fingerprint, but there will be many such TLS and HTTP fingerprints coming out of it. So you can use this to bring up a list of suspect ISP residential proxies and use that to inform your defence. And lastly, port scanning is still a semi-viable method, and by doing mass IP scanning over common ports, you may be able to find SOX proxies. So if you use something like Netlist or something like that, you could bring up a list that way. And just to illustrate the effectiveness of RTT timing, so this is straight of our database. That first graph there is what normal requests will look like. So there's very little difference between your TCP connection timing and your application layer timing. And there's a steep drop-off as you go down the chain. So it's relatively easy, even just using visual methods, to come up with a threshold cutoff using this and to have a real-time detection method. And this is what we use to great effect to protect against fraud and credential stuffing. And one of the things we do, rather than do outright blocking, is that you utilise contextualised security. So you pass down to the web application that this is a likely proxied request. And if it's likely proxied, then you can decide what you want to do. At that point, do you want to ask for MFA? Again, these are the top proxied networks that we determine within Australia. So utilising the RTT method, we can see Telstra, Vodafone and Optus are by far the largest culprits, and of course they have the most amount of customers. An interesting up and coming one, a little bit of technical, I've got to use it up here, information, is that SpaceX have an interesting infrastructure, the way that they terminate the connections, and they all look like they're proxies. So you can't just rely on the data ad verbatim, you have to be contextually aware. Ooh, this one, that one. So what would I like you to take away from this? Well, you can't look the gift horse in the mouth. You've got to really be wary of free applications and what they're doing. Installing a free application, a game for your kid, or you could be harbouring a residential proxy network while they're using that. Is BYOD in your network still a good idea? Are you happy having third-party requests of somewhat dubious nature passing through your network? I no longer believe that you can rely on your NDR to alert you. If GeoIP is coming from within your trusted network and less than 2% of IPs coming in on any type of IP reputation list, you have to look deeper. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions. Please connect with me. Sometimes I post semi-technical stuff on LinkedIn. Thank you.
you so much. Just a reminder, if you would like to submit some questions, please do so through the conference Q&A app. I do have a couple here. Would you mind, are you able to name and shame some of the free extensions or apps that you believe may be using some of these services?
Yeah, look, so Whole VPN has the largest install base. So any of these content unblockers to be avoided like the plague. In terms of free applications, the Infatica SDK was implicated, like for example, mod headers, which is a free browser extension, did have for a little while the Infatica SDK embedded within it. Their users actually revolted about that, so they did pull that out. But you can see that the conflict that open source and free applications have, they need to monetize. It's not for free to maintain these applications or do the development. And these companies are actively marketing to any type of free or open source application to be able to create a residual income stream. And it's very compelling. You know, like I'd probably think about it. And like if you look at the Infatica website, they have a partnership, for example, with an antivirus saying, you know, it's completely clean, it's completely safe. But the reality is that the vetting of the people who are using these proxies is limited. I called up Bright Data, which is now Luminati, to get an account. And I was a little bit worried initially, you know, here I am, I've got a web application security company, are they going to let me sign up to their service? And I got a phone call. And the phone call basically went something like this. Oh, how are you looking to use our service? Oh, by the way, web scraping is completely legitimate. And so that's really the extent of the customer vetting and know your customer that these type of services are doing. And this is probably the good end of town. Any like shady type of provider, what are they going to be doing? Sending an email. They're going to automate this process as much as possible.
Definitely concerning around the KYC there. Our next question is it possible to manipulate the timing thresholds in regards to detection methods?
Yeah, look, I've studied detection methods extensively, and by far the best one is the RTT. Possibly if you're going Starlink, I haven't completely figured out exactly why the latency difference on Starlink is so variable, but it basically means that you can't use a small RTT difference with anyone coming over Starlink. You've got to use a larger threshold. But in our experiments and in our production use, it is by far the most effective method. The second most effective method that we deploy is through some type of hardware fingerprinting. And you can leverage this via using JavaScript. Google Picasso is a very effective method, as well as some type of proof of work. And what you're looking to do essentially is you're looking for signal in the noise. So if you have so many requests coming to your service and one particular request has a particular timing and hardware fingerprint that stands out amongst the others, and then that's something that you could be looking at.
Fantastic, thank you. Our next question is, any advice on how to detect if any of your own devices are being used as a residential proxy?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. So like what I do at home is like I won't leverage the firmware of a commercial vendor on my gateway device. So like I'll use OpenWRT on my wireless router, on my router, for example, and it's something that I know it's open source. There's regular updates because quite often, you know, you might buy your TP-Link modem and the updates happen after 1 or 2 years and then they stop. And then you're sort of left at the mercy of the vendor. And they're always going after the next big thing. Right now, I'm not aware of a product that will detect proxy use, but I am looking at implementing an eBPF filter that will essentially do the reverse of what I just described. So you'll be able to look at outgoing requests and then look at the application layer requests and then look at the timing to be able to detect proxy use through your home or business network that way. But I haven't quite finished with that. And, but that's the idea. I think it's technically feasible and it's technically doable, and it probably should exist.
Fantastic. Well, I definitely have a new fear unlocked today and some more digging into my home network to do. But if everyone can please join me in giving Adam a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.